Hi, welcome. Today we're going to talk about the 7 reasons Bitcoin is a smart investment in September 2025. Now, I know by this time, this is not the first time you've heard of Bitcoin, and you've probably even been hearing a lot of different things about Bitcoin. But today, you are going to be able to get a fuller picture and understand exactly what's going on with Bitcoin, why all those stories probably were just pieces of the puzzle, and how you can put all that puzzle together today so that you will know exactly whether or not Bitcoin really is a good investment for you specifically, or if it's not. And we're going to give you data so that you get to see rather than just listening to somebody tell you something. But if you don't know me, my name is Kathy Vu. I am a mom. I am not a financial advisor of any kind. I don't even have a finance background. So why should you be listening to me? Well, because maybe I am like you and I get to tell you it's a testimony that Bitcoin was the investment I was looking for. Even when my financial advisor was like, well, I don't know very much about it. Seems kind of risky. So, how about this? And I considered really hard what he was saying, but it was very much the same thing I had been doing for years and years. And that hadn't gotten me anywhere. Not, not where I wanted to go. And so, if you're in that situation, maybe by now you want to know, is Bitcoin a smart investment? And so that's what we're going to take you through today. And it's not going to be just my opinion. Um, I'm going to give you some data as well and give you some resources if you'd like, so that you can look at it for yourself and decide. Now, in the past, Bitcoin was whatever it was price wise, and it's been going up and down. But where it was in the past does not make as much of a difference as where it might be in the future. Because if you're sitting here today wondering if Bitcoin can do something for you and your family, it's not going to matter where it was in the past. It's going to matter where it's going to be in the future. But we're going to use the past as data because those are facts, right? To kind of give us an idea of what we could possibly see in the future, right? So we're going to do that today. We're going to give you 7 reasons why right now is the probably the best time to start investing in a risk adjusted viewpoint. And what you're going to get at the end of this video is you'll know whether or not you should invest or not. You'll know the data, some facts as to what makes those decisions for you so that you don't have to wonder anymore. But if you went out and tried to find all this information, it could take you hours and hours. So if you stick with me, it'll take you less than 1 hour for sure, and you'll get all the information. So if you stick with me, you're going to save time and you're not going to have to wonder. You will have all the information you need. And if you with me all the way to the end, you'll even be able to save some money. So win-win. Stick around, save some time, stick to the end, save some money. So let's get going. All right. So if I can get my text started. Oops. I'm not always techie. Okay, here we go. 7 reasons why Bitcoin is a great investment right now. Now, reason number 1 is that the USA, the largest economic power in the world, is now pro Bitcoin. We've got legislation that some has already been passed that favors this new finance technology called cryptocurrency, and Bitcoin is the largest. It's the number 1. It's the strongest finance um, cryptocurrency, and it is the most trusted. That's why I focus on Bitcoin. Also, Bitcoin was added or has been being added to our national reserves. And that's a big deal because the other national reserves we have for the country of the USA is things like oil reserves, gold reserves, things that the government believes are going to continue increasing in value. And that is important for the country to hold. So that says a lot about Bitcoin. Now, USA is also pro Bitcoin because of our new president. So, oops.
Hello, Bitcoiners. Thank you very much. Hello, it's good to be with you.
Okay, so that was in 2024. Back then, he was learning about Bitcoin, but he realized how Bitcoin really could help the country overcome its debt problem. Back then, when he was just telling or addressing this Bitcoin conference, he was kind of new, even though he knew finance. For him, Bitcoin was not a given. And now we've got not just the president, but an entire cabinet that is openly supporting Bitcoin. These are financial leaders, powerhouses in business who support Bitcoin. And so they weren't bought in. They each had a stance on Bitcoin before they became part of our government. And so, with people who are that knowledgeable about finance, about business, support Bitcoin, you wonder, should everybody know about this? And so, with this leadership, Bitcoin is going mainstream. It's officially supported by our federal policy. So, when the US starts supporting Bitcoin, that increases the trust level. So more people will look at it and it increases adoption. And then what do you think would happen to the value? Yes, Bitcoin has been rising in value since this administration has come in, even a little bit before. So reason number two is it's not just our government, but it's also Wall Street buying Bitcoin. So companies have been adding Bitcoin to their treasuries, holding Bitcoin within the company to increase their value. Companies like Tesla, GameStop, MicroStrategy, which is now called Strategy, and as well ETFs, large money management firms, they are buying Bitcoin. And then now allowing and creating services to help their customers, their clients, also have easier access to Bitcoin. So they're like, they bought in and now they're starting to pave a way so that more and more of their customers can have access to Bitcoin, making it even easier to access Bitcoin, even easier to start investing. And this is big. Retirement accounts like 401ks now can hold Bitcoin. And that's a $14 trillion kind of pocket of money that now has access to Bitcoin. To give you an example, all of Bitcoin is about 2.5 trillion. 2.5 trillion. And now 14 trillion for just the retirement accounts could possibly access it on top of all the ETFs and all the companies. Bitcoin is definitely growing. So the faces you see right there are part of Wall Street. You might recognize some of them. Kevin O'Leary and Mark Cuban from Shark Tank. Kathy Wood, she's the CEO of ARK Invest. They specialize in disruptive technologies. And she's been a great proponent of Bitcoin and Ethereum. Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Maybe Larry Fink, he's the CEO of BlackRock. And they recently started buying tons and tons of Bitcoin. They themselves are already valuated at $11 trillion. And they're starting to put more and more money in Bitcoin. So if Wall Street and retirement funds are all buying Bitcoin, this is no longer a fad. It's no longer just something that crypto bros do, right? Big money is coming in and that increases demand and you end up with a price reaction. And that's what we have been seeing. So when you start investing, if you start investing now, you will be in good company with the rest of Wall Street. And so reason number three, and this has to do a little bit more with your pocket as well. When prices rise quickly, so we're talking about inflation, Bitcoin helps to protect your money. How does that work? So you've probably noticed that, especially over the last 5 years, maybe even 10, the prices of things have been creeping up, haven't they? gas, groceries, rent. And even if you're saving money, when the price of everything else goes up, you're actually losing purchasing power, right? The amount of money you've saved no longer goes as far as you wanted it to. And when that happens, how can retirement or future dollars really keep up? It's hard, right? And maybe you've been noticing that in your bank account and your retirement accounts. How do you fix that? And that's one of the key problems that Bitcoin solves. Now, exactly how it solves that would be beyond the scope of this particular lesson, but I definitely, in the courses I teach, we spend a little bit extra time or to make sure everyone understands that and how it all comes about. But in like 30,000-foot view, what's happening is that the money we're using, when we hold it, when we save it, if we park our investment dollars in it, they have a certain value. But when there is higher inflation, as we've been noticing in the last several years, a lot of that might be because the government is taking on more and more debt. Our debt keeps going up. And so, how many times have we heard, oh, the Congress has to show up and increase our debt ceiling because the government is just spending more and more? So in a way, it's almost like a teenager with a credit card and they're not paying off their limit, but they keep spending. They're taking on more debt. But do they have a way of paying that off? The way to pay it off is either to stop. Well, actually, I don't even have to tell you. I'm sure you know. But the government, unlike a teenager, also has the possibility of printing money to pay off their debt. And they do that because it's cheaper to just print money and pay off their debt. It makes their debt cheaper, even though it dilutes the dollars, the money, the savings, the purchasing power in your wallet. They're not concerned about that. And that's why the money has been being diluted and is no longer as powerful as it should be. So when money weakens, why? From more and more supply. When Bitcoin comes in, Bitcoin can't be printed more. It's not controlled by the government. And so when you can buy Bitcoin, it has been preserving value over time. Now, yes, it does go up and down with volatility, but notice over the past 15 years, while you and I have been investing in the stock market, Bitcoin has gone up hundreds of thousands of percent. It started as less than a penny and now is more than $100,000. So even with the volatility over time, it still has preserved value. So that's key. Now, reason number 4, and we're blazing through these. We're going to slow down a little bit as we go forward because I want to make sure I'm explaining all of these in a well-rounded way. Reason number 4, the world is starting to buy Bitcoin. What does that mean exactly? How much of the world has Bitcoin? If you started investing now, you would be in front of 95% of the world. Only 5% of the world actually has Bitcoin. And now countries like the US and China are now holding Bitcoin in their reserves. Global payment systems like PayPal and also even major banks are starting to build with cryptocurrency. Even businesses worldwide are embracing Bitcoin and they're also offering other cryptocurrency services. So countries, they're starting to buy Bitcoin. So it's US, China, Russia, Pakistan, Bhutan, a few Middle Eastern countries as well. And now that the US has an official stance on Bitcoin, both US's friends and enemies are probably going to want to buy some too. Now, if you don't have a finance background and you're like, okay, I get that Bitcoin's going up. I get that people are buying in, but there's something in the middle that's just, it hasn't cemented in my mind. And I remember being there. So I want to give you a really good example. So it's like Boom, you got it. All right. So nations and companies are buying. And when people see that, trust grows. Okay. That makes sense. There's more buyers, there's less availability, and value rises. Let's talk a little bit more about that. Make sure that's crystal clear. So I'm going to give you a converse example first. You've been to a dollar store and you've seen thousands and thousands of plastic bubble toys or whatever, right? There's thousands and thousands, and they can be cute, but there's so much supply. There may not be thousands and thousands of people who want a dollar bobblehead toy. So even though the supply goes up, people don't necessarily want to buy more. And so the price stays down. Conversely, Bitcoin, the part that you need to know is that Bitcoin is actually a scarce commodity. There will only ever be 21 million Bitcoin that will ever be made. 19.5 million are already out in circulation. So the rest of the world is fighting for this next 1.5 million, and or the price goes up to entice those who already hold Bitcoin to try to sell them. Okay, so now you end up with something that has a low supply, but more and more people are entering the room. Think of like an auctioneer room. It's starting to get full of people. But the amount of Bitcoin that's available for sale over time is decreasing. What would happen to that price? Have you ever been like that? Maybe in a silent auction or something, and you've noticed that at first maybe you're the only name, but as the night goes on, there's 10 other people. And that price starts bidding up and up and up. That's what's been happening to Bitcoin. And as long as more people keep wanting to come in, it will continue happening. How do you know that's going to keep happening? Or is Bitcoin running out of buyers? Remember, the US and country nation states, big companies, they're not buying half a Bitcoin, 0.1 Bitcoin at a time like you and I can. They're buying 100 Bitcoin at a time, 1,000 Bitcoin at a time, and they just started. And that's why you're seeing Bitcoin start running up with bigger numbers. Over 100K, we hadn't seen those numbers before like 2025. Will it keep happening? Because these are the first of the countries buying it. These are not the last. So more than likely, it'll keep happening because there's more and more adoption. How many companies are in the world? The whole world. Well, right now there's 100 and some odd companies that are buying. Could there be more? The Russell 2000, and that's only US companies. And that's only the US market. So many more can come in. So reason number 5 is now. This year is usually the time we see Bitcoin grow the fastest, price go up the fastest. So, like I had told you a little bit a while ago, Bitcoin grows in cycles. And this year is probably the time where we see Bitcoin will grow fast again. Bitcoin tends to have 4-year cycles, and the last year of the 4-year cycle tends to be when, boom, you see the big rise. Now is the stage that Bitcoin historically has seen these big price movements. So you are coming in at a great time. And that's exactly why you might have checked a Bitcoin maybe even a year ago and gone, wow, it's grown so much since January 2024 till about now, a little bit more than 18 months. Bitcoin grew 135%. Can I promise you that the next 18 months is going to be another 135%? I can't. We're going to talk about that in a little bit, what you can expect. But remember, this is the best time to start investing in Bitcoin in a risk-adjusted vantage point. Why? Because volatility is actually lower and confidence is higher. So, do you have to wait for Bitcoin to bottom out before you buy? That would be great if you could, but you don't have to wait, especially when the likelihood that somebody who is not invested would catch the bottom, like more than 1,000,000 to 1. Most people don't do that way. Most people will start investing and will be in Bitcoin and catch these opportunities. Can you catch the opportunities that come? I teach my students how to find those opportunities. That's really how you build wealth in Bitcoin. The person who's trying to catch the exact bottom, they'll probably miss it and think, oh, I missed it, so I didn't get in. And Bitcoin will keep rising and they'll constantly miss it. I've never met anyone who went, I was not in Bitcoin and I happened to catch the bottom. I've never met that person. But I've met people who've gone, yeah, I started investing and I kept investing. And now Bitcoin has changed my life. Bitcoin has created 84, 84,000 millionaires in the last 15 years. Just Bitcoin, not including any other cryptocurrency. So how did they do that? Did they make $1,000,000 in a day? No. They started understanding Bitcoin. They started investing. And eventually they'll catch a growth phase. And that's what I want for you. So if you're here, you can start investing and catch this growth phase. So it's not too late for you. And that's why it's a great time to start investing in September 2025. Now, reason number 6, the world, people, regular retail investors around the world haven't caught on to Bitcoin yet, but they're starting to. Like I said before, only about 5% of people globally own real Bitcoin. And if you get in, that means you would be ahead of 95% of the rest of the retail investors that are coming. Bitcoin is going mainstream. And as these companies continue to make Bitcoin easier and easier to start investing, and we're starting to see how many come in, and they're coming in droves. So adoption is increasing. And I'll show you more data about that right here. So this chart is not specifically about Bitcoin. I put that little Bitcoin coin in there. This chart, you might have seen it before. This is the S curve of technology adoption. So initially, you start at the bottom over here, where very few people know about a technology. And they end up being the very early adopters. And that number grows slowly at first. But we're now at this kind of general early adopter stage. We've got less than 5% of retail adopters in Bitcoin. We are nowhere near 10% adoption. So we're somewhere in here where, look at this. We're starting to get huge right before we get huge adoption. And when that happens, usually price will go up. Why? Because, like I said, Bitcoin is a scarce commodity. You got more and more people running into that auction room trying to buy Bitcoin when there's not that much Bitcoin to be bought. But there's still room for you, and it does not take a lot of money to start. You can do it with $5 or $10. So don't let all the people coming in scare you from you taking your position. The only one who would keep you out of Bitcoin is you. It's not money, it's not technology, it's not finance. Anyone who wants to start investing in Bitcoin can. And that's another thing I love about Bitcoin. The barrier to entry is actually very low. And Bitcoin in the next decade, we're probably going to find out that some of even the poorer countries adopted Bitcoin and were able to change their entire country dynamics, their country's economics, because they got in early. So there are no excuses, only information gaps to know, how do I take advantage of this? This is happening with or without you. How can you take advantage of this to make it work for you? And that's why we're here. So I'm hoping this is landing for you, that you can be a part of this and you are not too late. So another chart that I really love looking at is this chart was actually created a few years ago. And so it's a little bit older, but this is so much information right here. This is actually comparing Bitcoin adoption to the internet adoption rate. So the top right here is internet years, where from 1990s to the 2000s, people are getting more and more online, right? All of us are online. So you probably know that this is true. And we went from less than 1% adoption rate, internet adoption rate on the right, all the way to almost 100%. On the bottom right here is Bitcoin years. So Bitcoin started in 2009, but no one ever actually used it to buy anything until 2010. So we start back down here where Bitcoin was less than a penny. And over the years, so I told you this chart was actually created in 2021. And at that time, Bitcoin was about 10,000. There were times during 2021 that it was even a little bit less, but that's where it was about. And so we were estimating this, the person who made this chart was estimating, if Bitcoin grew like the internet grew, how much might it be in the future? That's what it was looking at. So now that we got an arrow right here in 2025, look where it hit 100,000. And that is kind of where we are. In 2025, Bitcoin just got over 100K. And actually, it's been sticking around. We've been bouncing around up to even 124. And I'll show you the chart of Bitcoin today. But what I really want you to get out of this particular chart is, as time goes on, where might Bitcoin be if Bitcoin continues to follow this adoption rate? Because it has been pretty darn close, has it not? So in 2030, where might Bitcoin be? Well, this is pretty darn close to 1 million, ladies and gentlemen, right here. And I know that seems like a lot. And some people might go, oh, really? Because that would be, well, right now it's a little less than 10x. So financial leaders in the space make charts like this based on other things. There are price predictions, like from Kathy Wood from ARK Invest. She believes that Bitcoin's going to be maybe even as much as 3 million by 2032. And hers is not even the highest in price prediction. There is Michael Saylor, the CEO of Strategy, who believes that Bitcoin may be higher than 13 million by 2045. So could growth like that with Bitcoin help you in your family and your finances? Now remember, these are not Joe Schmo down the road who I don't know what they do. These are respected leaders in the finance and business space. People with 25, 35 years of work in this space. And this is what they're thinking about Bitcoin. And you can Google all this, YouTube it. Michael Saylor, strategy, Bitcoin price prediction, or even Kathy Wood, or even see what Robert Kiyosaki or any of the other people that you respect in the finance space say. Now, reason number 7. So we're getting to the end. Bitcoin has outperformed the S&P 500, the standard of most of our retirement funds, most of our investment accounts, the S&P 500. If that's where we're basing most of our investments in and how much growth we get, Bitcoin has outperformed that metric by over 500% over the last 5 years. So not decades and decades of the last 5 years. And I'll show you more specifically how we got these numbers and where this number comes from. But if Bitcoin grew by itself more than 500% in those 5 years, and the S&P grew about 60% in the same amount of time, that means Bitcoin grew many times more than the S&P 500. So like I said, you do not have to catch the bottom of Bitcoin to get value from investing with it. You understand Bitcoin, you start investing and you catch a growth phase like now, and you watch it grow. This is 5 years, guys. So this chart, ChatGPT helped me put it together. If you want to get the exact numbers I used for this, go ahead and scan that QR code. That'll give you a chart. You don't have to opt in or anything. That just gives you the numbers that ChatGPT and I were using. I did verify all the numbers independently with Google search. Most of them aren't significantly different, except for the one that I'll tell you about in a little bit later. So Bitcoin didn't just 5x. They said it was more than 5x. But I know when we start talking about big numbers, when you're not used to Bitcoin or cryptocurrency, it sounds too crazy. You think, well, it has to be like, no way. So here's the data. In 5 years, Bitcoin grew 983%. While in the same 5 years, the S&P 500 index grew 96%. The total US market, this is based on VTI, which is Vanguard's total index. Okay. That's about 90% growth, which is actually great, right? Wouldn't you want 90% growth in 5 years? Yes. Right. Gold actually hit that too, about 90%. Now, US homes, these were like family homes, not all of real estate. And this was based on the Case and Schiller. I'm not familiar. I wasn't really familiar with that index or that those numbers. So what I found was that when I used average home prices in September 2020 to September 2025, and that's the date range I use for all of these numbers, it was about 5% different. So, I left the chart be. Hopefully that's cool with you. Home prices changed maybe 46%. Now, that means if you're looking at this, I know this looks super high. And part of you might be wondering, is that possible with Bitcoin? Yeah. Well, could it be a fluke? Maybe. But me having studied this, and you can do the same because we're going to look at a chart in a little bit and you'll see the whole chart for yourself. This is not the first time Bitcoin's done this. Actually, remember how I told you that Bitcoin grows in cycles? Bitcoin does this almost every cycle. And this is the fourth, we're currently in the fourth cycle. So I've seen Bitcoin do a 23x in a cycle. I've seen Bitcoin, it was before my time, but Bitcoin has in the past even done like a 70 something, I can't remember, but by then it doesn't matter, 70 something X in one cycle. So this is not new for Bitcoin. And that's why you don't want to miss these kind of growth phases when you can catch them, especially if it can make a difference for you and your family. Bitcoin ended up being the investment that I was wanting and looking for that at the time nobody knew about. So no one could really tell me. And that's why I'm here trying to tell you guys. This could be exactly the thing that you've been wanting to find, but past news, we're giving you scary stories, and we're going to talk about those in a little bit. But if Bitcoin is being bought by the country, by other governments, by countries and companies, and they're willing to put billions of dollars into Bitcoin, not just $100, $1,000, $10,000 at a time. Could there be something to this? Could they know something that most of us don't know, but we're starting to, right? So I know this sounds big, let's go through here. You are right to wonder if this always happens. No, it doesn't always happen. And we're going to talk about this because you're right. Bitcoin is not a guarantee. It is an investment. And all investments have inherent risk. Past performance does not guarantee future results. I don't have a crystal ball to tell you exactly where Bitcoin will be in 2030 or 2032, if it will be $1 million. I can tell you that what we've already seen gives us a pretty good clue at what is possible. Remember, we saw that arc of adoption. And even though the chart had stopped at 2021 and it tended to be right on the money at 2025, can we get close to that at 2030 or 2032? Google, YouTube it. Kathy Wood thinks it's going to be 3 million. Michael Saylor is going to be millions above that. Tom Lee, Samson Mao, Jeff Booth. Listen to some of these other thought leaders in the space and let them tell you why they think Bitcoin is going to continue to grow. So don't take my word for it. You stick with me, I can help you get to all the information a little bit easier, but it is out there. And it's out there for you to find. So now we know Bitcoin is profitable. 84,000 millionaires in 15 years at 10x's per cycle. But is it safe? And I'm sure that if this is not your first time learning about Bitcoin, you have wondered this over and over again. And this might be the why you actually have been still continuing to sit on the sidelines. So as I talk to people about Bitcoin, I've realized that when people ask, is it safe? They're not always talking about the same thing. And so we're going to go through all the things that I've been able to help students with as they're considering this, okay? Because sometimes when people are asking, is it safe? They're actually meaning, is it risky? And the price might go down, so I might lose money. Maybe they might be thinking, is it safe from scammers? I don't want to lose my money. Or maybe they're thinking, is it safe if I do all the right investments, that I'm storing it right so my family has access to it in the future, and or something doesn't happen where it's suddenly missing or gone, right? And all those are different ways on what you would need to learn to be safe from all of those. So it's not a single answer because those are different questions, right? So we're going to talk about these. And again, I can't go through the whole shebang because it takes a little bit more time to do that, but we're going to touch on each of these individually because there is an answer for you. So I don't want any of those is it safe questions to be what keeps you out, because there is a way to make it safer for you. So here we go for, can I lose money if I buy Bitcoin? You're going to go to www.coinmarketcap.com and you can put space BTC, which is kind of like the acronym for Bitcoin. This is an absolutely free tool to do research on cryptocurrency. Bitcoin, when you get there, Bitcoin's going to be the number one, the topmost crypto, because it is the number one crypto in cryptocurrency. And you're going to probably see a chart that looks a little bit like this. And so is my money safe in Bitcoin? Now, remember, there is absolutely no guarantees in Bitcoin, and that Bitcoin is volatile. This is how volatile it can be. But I want you to recognize a few things that we're going to see in this chart. This first green candle is the top of the 2017-2018 cycle. And this is where Bitcoin got to $20,000. It had never been to $20,000 before that. It had been a few $1,000s, a few $100s. And that was a big deal, 20K at that time. And if you had been somebody who invested at 20K After that, what you saw is Bitcoin go down. This red candle is about the bottom of that next cycle where Bitcoin was under 4K. But notice what happens. Bitcoin bounces back. The next top was $69,000. And say you had been unlucky again and you bought there and it went down because Bitcoin is volatile. Now, remember what we said about risk. There are ways to minimize risk when you start understanding Bitcoin. Are there ways to kind of avoid buying at the top? Yes. Are there ways to get yourself to try to buy it closer to these bottoms? Remember, I said if the exact bottom, highly, highly unlikely. But could you have bought somewhere down here? Yes. There are ways to figure that out. But again, it takes something that we're going to talk about just a little bit. However, the up and down cycle, Bitcoin is continuing to go up and down, but notice these next ones. They're not exactly like this, are they? So could Bitcoin be doing something a little bit different because all of the people are coming in? There are still up and downs, yeah? But they're not this, and they're not this. So I cannot guarantee that Bitcoin will not ever do this again. But what if we're coming into a time where Bitcoin is going to do this? Where Bitcoin is going to do like these, where it comes down a little bit, but it makes a new high. And it comes down a little bit and it makes a new high. If it keeps going like that, we'll never get these bottom red candles, not exactly like this. And so if some people are waiting for those, they may stay out for until they, like I was going to say forever, but eventually they'll probably be maybe one of those later adopters and realize that they were waiting for something that would come. I can't guarantee any of it, but I can say that there are ways to buy not at the top. Bitcoin long term continues growing. And that's what you would want to know. But it makes it so much juicier when you know how to buy and get a great deal, doesn't it? So, yeah, you can decrease risk by understanding Bitcoin more and knowing a little bit closer of when to start buying in those juicier times, right? So that gets rid of risk when you have a better understanding of when to buy and sell. And another thing is when you're dealing with risk, if you're thinking, oh, I need to buy today and I need a guarantee that a month from now I will have more money, that's really risky because Bitcoin's volatile. But it decreases risk when you have a better timeline. And so that's the kind of things I teach my students to almost guarantee growth because we have a better understanding of Bitcoin and we have an understanding of what timeline we need in order to be profitable. Our next point of how to make Bitcoin safer is one, stay away from scams. And there are a million scams all over the place. Bitcoin is not the only place there are scams. They're all over crypto. They're all over other credit cards. And when the gold rush was happening, I'm sure there were gold rush scams, right? It's because it has to do with money. So it's not related to Bitcoin specifically. But would it help to know what a scam looks like so you can identify it and then veer away? Would it help? So I created a tool that I give my students where if they're not sure if a scam is there, of course, they can always, hey, Kathy, can you look at this and tell me if you think it's a scam? But what I've been doing recently is using a tool that I created, especially where I'm being able to take the copy of the scam, put it in the tool and say, tell me if this is a scam. And it'll give me reasons why it is a scam, giving me the correct information, giving me the correct numbers to call if indeed it had been a legitimate email or a legitimate text. And so I'm sure that I can just delete that and go along with my day. If that would help you, there are tools out there that do that. And then finally, when you're scared of, well, long term, how do I know that I'm storing it safely? All of that, of course, is knowledge. How do I know how to do all that? Investing is safer with knowledge because knowledge is power. How much time does it take to get all this knowledge? I'm able to teach my students how to do this, usually 60 to 70 minutes a week for 10 weeks. They'll know everything they need to know to be an investor and have the knowledge that keeps them safe, as well as how to start investing in Bitcoin so that they are profitable quicker because they know how to decrease risk. Of course, I can't guarantee what's going to happen for everybody, but I am able to say that the students that I can help do tend to be able to start running. So I know it's possible for you. These are usually women who do not have any tech or finance background, like I didn't either. And they're able to do it. So I know that you can too. And you can do it on your own or with help. So here we go. Imagine if you had been able to start investing in Bitcoin earlier than now. With the changes in your finance, would they have made your today different than what they are if you had stepped into Bitcoin a little bit earlier? Do you want to keep walking the same path you have been walking over the last 5 years into the next 5? Would you want Bitcoin to help you make your finances better over the next 5 years so that you're giving and you can give your family all the things you've been dreaming about? If that's vacation, if that's access to college, that's what Bitcoin did for me. I'm a nobody out here. I'm a mom with 4 kids, and a minimum of 3 kids will be in college at the exact same time, maybe even 4. I had to figure out how to get college for all these kids. I had to figure out how to get college fund for all those kids and do it where it doesn't break my retirement. And I did it, half of it as a stay-at-home mom, the other half as like a part-time job mom. So I know Bitcoin works. And that's why I'm trying to shout it from the rooftops. If you're in that situation where you're like, hey, I don't have as much money that I want coming in, but I've got things to take care of. That's the kind of person that Bitcoin can help. That's the kind of person who needs some growth asset like Bitcoin because the stock market didn't do enough for me. So if that's where you are, maybe it's time to give this a shot. And if you want to, I'll show you how. Now, of course, yes, you can figure it out all by yourself. That is out there. There's so much information. You will be able to find the information you need. It may take a time to do it. I can tell you that it took me months and months. I can tell you that I would end up watching videos that I didn't need. So I made an easier path for those who are interested. If you would want something that could help you understand Bitcoin, take care of the things that make it safer for you, decreasing risk, avoiding scams, teaching you how to store it correctly, and teach you exactly how to make a plan written out just for you to get to the exact goal you have been wanting. Then you might want to consider if you would like to get started because Bitcoin will help you do that. And if you would want all those things that I just mentioned at your fingertips so that you get all of that information in less than 10 weeks, where you're set, then you might want to also scan that QR code. That's going to give you more information. It's not going to tie you to anything. It'll get you more information for my program called Bitcoin Abundance. Okay, it's going to be a DIY program. There's recorded videos in there. And because I know sometimes you get information, you're like, let me double check. I also added a one-on-one private session where you and I can sit down and talk about what is either holding you back or what are the exact steps you might need to make sure you've got the things in order where you're going to get to your goal with the special plan that is created for you with Bitcoin Abundance when you follow the steps. All right. You'll get demos, so you'll see how to do things. You'll get guidelines and you'll see all the steps written for you. We're also going to talk about how to get that exact plan in place. And it's going to be so easy that you're going to be amazed because I created a Bitcoin wealth calculator where you put in the numbers of what you have to invest, how much maybe you can add over time, how much time you've got, and how much it's going to end up with if you invest in Bitcoin. And that way you'll get an exact plan. It's, hey, I want $3 million to retire. Great. When are you going to retire? Boom, boom, boom. Oh, I need to invest here. No more guesswork. No more guesswork. So you don't have to keep throwing money in your 401k wondering if that's going to be enough. Or maybe it's not enough. Or maybe it's too much and you deserve a vacation instead. We're taking away a lot of the guesswork. So you've got what you need to know. You've got a goal and a plan on how to get there. If that's for you, click Bitcoin Abundance. And I promised you that if you stay to the end, all the information I gave you does save you time from figuring all that out on your own. And here I'm going to save you money if you click this over the next few days. And I'm only going to open this for 72 hours or less. We're going to give you a coupon code. So make sure the email that you gave me is going to get the special email that I will send out to you from kathyvu.com. So, mark it safe, stick it in your inbox. We'll give you a coupon code so that this course that could possibly change your entire finances for your family is going to be less than what you would even spend in a weekend, probably. And to make sure that you feel comfortable with this, it could be risk-free if you follow the steps, you go through the information and the checkpoints, you've done the work. And if you do not make the money back that you spent in this course in 100 days, I'll refund your money. Okay? This is just so amazing of an opportunity. I don't want anybody to sit on the sidelines thinking they were left out. I'm willing to take the risk to help you see your potential in this. If you would like that, click the link. If you have any questions, you can email support@kathyvu.com, or you can find me on Instagram at kathyvu.co. All right? Let me know how I can help. I'm hoping this was a great store of information and that you're excited. But I know that if there's anything holding you back, I don't want you to be that person who goes forward in time and looks back at a regret. That's why there is a guarantee with this course. All right? If you start, you're going to get value. If I don't give you that value, you get your money back. Fair enough? All right, let's get at it. Scan that. I will see you inside.